Welcome to Cedar Fort Publishing and Media Behind the Scenes. I'm Valerie Loveless, and I'll be your host today. I have Chelsea Curran, romance author of the Burnheart Redemption. Welcome, Chelsea.
It's good to be here.
And did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. You never know.
Oh, I get that all the time. Trust me. It's pronounced as Curran, Crayon, Curran, all that fun stuff. So I'm used to it.
Crayon.
Yeah, no, I'm not. You think that was a joke, but I'm not kidding.
I bet you're not. So welcome. It's nice to meet you, over the internet. You're coming to us remotely from Arizona.
That's right.
How's the weather down there today?
Straight from the desert. It's a whopping 85 degrees over here, and
wow.
it's pretty nice. I mean, once you get through the brutal 115 degree weather, it's pretty great.
Wow. We just had snow a couple days out here in Utah, and we were all just crying and whining about it. And
I mean, I miss it. I miss the way it looks, especially during the holidays.
Yes.
But to be honest, I don't miss driving in it.
Right. So tell me about your books that you have.
So the Burnheart Redemption that you just mentioned, that was published last year, towards the beginning of the year, I believe. And it started out as my first novel, actually. When I was 18, my parents had gotten divorced. And so I was in that what is love kind of mindset, and where do I find it, and how can this apply to me in any way possible? And so not really knowing what to do about it, I started college and met these two wonderful roommates. We'll call them Annie and Savannah because that's their names. Still love the shout out. And yeah. And they were the ones who introduced me to the world of romance novels. And now I had previously read Twilight and Hunger Games, which was, I thought, the epitome of romance at the time. But they introduced me to a little bit more, just newer authors and newer philosophies that I just fell in love with and wanted to dive deeper into. And of course, when that happened, I felt this desire to write something of my own. I was inspired by songs I listened to, conversations I had, and people I met. And so I started to write this story, this 12-page short story for my roommates. It started out as us three being the characters of this historical romantic era, Jane Austen-esque type piece. And I was really excited to write this dancing scene. And so, because ballroom and Latin and swing, those were my things in high school and college. And so I could easily picture this scene happening. And once I did, it really evolved into something a lot more. And so for a whole year, I just dedicated myself to this story. And I got to about 400 pages. And once I finished it, everyone was really proud of me. I mean, for being 20 years old and to finish a 400-page novel, I mean, that felt like an accomplishment in of itself. And so I ended up sending it to publishers and getting rejected over 50 times, and for good reason. Being 20 years old and being not so educated in the structure of writing, it needed a lot of work. So I ended up putting that on the shelf for a while and decided to write something new. And so over the years, I did work on something else, and so just improving my skill until eventually the second book that I completed did get published. I got picked up by Cedar Fort, and who launched my career, much thanks to them. And when I decided, I'm going to go back to this first novel and see if I can actually make that first dream happen. And lo and behold, it did. Not without so many speed bumps along the way, but it was a dream come true when that happened. The 18-year-old girl in me was so excited to see this come to fruition.
One theme I see with a lot of authors, especially first-time authors, is that you just can't give up, can you? And you need that feedback from other editors and publishers and stuff to get you where you need to be, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. One of the first publishers that I sent it to marked up the entire first page, just asking questions and writing down notes and really bringing to my attention what I need to fix. And that was something that really stuck with me because it's that type of feedback that says, "Oh, this is how I can improve."
Mm-hmm.
Just to have someone say thanks, but we don't want it is almost like thanks, but you're not a good writer. It's more like thanks, we see your potential. You just need to get yourself up there
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of
and work on it.
right. And I had to do the same thing with mine as well. I wasn't getting proper feedback from my family, you know. They weren't giving it to me straight. So I
Yeah.
finally found someone who would like give it to me straight and be like, "You have plot holes here and you need to work on this." And then once I went through and went through everything that she recommended to me, that's when I finally got published.
For me also, I was trying to write a love story without having any romantic experience on my end at all.
So, one thing I really liked about your novel is you took kind of a very different approach for a Regency period novel where you kind of made it more from the men's perspective, majorly, than from the women's perspective. Why did you choose to do that?
I don't think I originally planned it that way because solely it was supposed to be a female perspective. I did notice that when I first started, but slowly I started to really like my male leads. And the more that I delved into their personalities, the more that I wanted to know what their thoughts were, especially when they're trying to communicate, and especially too when their timelines and their experiences are all happening separately. And a lot is happening to them, and I wanted to have more an adventuristic kind of genre to it too, not just the romance. But in my book, spoiler alert, my characters, my male characters are kidnapped by pirates. They're dealing with their own issues as brothers. They are trying to figure out who's taking over their property and all that they had worked for. And so with all this excitement happening to them, I wanted the readers to see what that was like. I wanted to see what that was like. And so it was a lot of fun. Like, I don't know, just being not a female, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of a dumb thing to say, but it just seemed fun. Like I just liked the idea of writing scenes that involved sword fights, and that just those were scenes that just didn't involve my female characters there to witness because they were dealing with their own problems. So I guess it was just my way of getting out of the female drama and just dealing with someone else's drama for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely none of that female drama in it that typically that's the Regency bread and butter, which personally
Yeah,
I like it that way. But and the way
well,
I
something that
solved
we
the
know.
sword fight problem was I just gave the women swords and let them fight too.
Right. I have been working on a new one where yes, there will be pirates involved in this one too, in this Regency novel that I have, but they I am thinking about adding more of a female adventuristic approach too.
Hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. I guess I just lean towards this type of story arc.
So I mean, this is Bernhardt is the one you started when you were really young, correct?
Yes.
And so this one grew up with you as a writer. What was it like, going back and reading your old manuscripts and stuff? What was it like having to like endure that change of your baby?
Yeah, the word endure is the perfect word for that because I just remember shaking my head, doing 500 face palms on every page, just like just looking at my sentence structure was hilarious because I dreamed big and it was so choppy and it was so exaggerated, so dramatic, and I had to cut a lot of work, rewrite a lot of my work. But I mean, it was actually kind of cool to remember who I was and what I thought about and what I dreamed about at that time, and how I had changed personally. And but also to have this new hope too, because now that I was published, now this piece had potential to be something. When I
Hmm.
was first writing it, yeah, I was hopeful, but there was no real possibility yet. now there was an actual possibility that it would happen, and I got more excited the more I worked on it. And so now the editing process was a different story because I went back and looked at it, yes, and I did change things, but once the editors got their hands on it, that was a heartbreaker because I looked at every page and there were still 5 notes on every single page of what I needed to fix and change. And with Regency, that's hard because yes, it requires a lot of research and a lot of understanding of the tone and voice that you're using. And so I had less less time to really go through it and perfect it. I had that deadline that I had to meet. And so if I had a longer deadline, I think it would have been better. But I still am very proud of what I had created. It was my original baby that, I got to see come to life again. And so now that I know how hard it can really be, how hard it is to go back and to fix something that I didn't put so much research and effort into beforehand, has made me a better writer for sure.
And you can see why some editors didn't want to tackle it too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I give kudos to them because they have to sift through this entire novel and just break it down sentence by sentence. Because I had to do that on someone's short story once, and the poor guy used I found myself ... in like 5 different places, and I'm like, dude, you keep finding yourself places. Are you okay? And so, it's like those simple little things that maybe go, oh, I can tell you right now. I had made on a recent manuscript that I had submitted, and what I had done was I used the name Ian. Now he was in my original story, but thinking that I was going to make a sequel, but I decided to make it a stand, and so I had to change it. Doing so changed the word Ian in every single word, like the word physician, which has IAN at the end. Oh, so no. As I looked at it, I realized the word physician said Physoan throughout the entire manuscript that I had already submitted.
Oh, no.
And so I went, oh, no. So, I mean, they gave me a chance to rewrite it and to resubmit it, thank goodness. But at first I go, why would I have to rewrite it? I don't understand. And I looked at it, went the first page and went, oh, dear. and so I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes. But I'm human.
That reminds me of what happened with mine when my father-in-law wanted to read it before I had even, considered publishing it. So I think I was just about at that point where I was about to submit it. And in my story, it's a story within a story. So the story within the story is all in italics. But when I printed it for him, none of the italics printed. And so it was a disaster. I mean, I don't even know how he got through it, but bless his heart, literally not passive aggressively, he did it. He got through it and he still liked it. So it happens. It happens to the best of it, and thank goodness, because he told me about it, and then I was like, oh, I better fix that before I start sending that off to publishers.
Oh yeah, I mean they're the biggest help, especially family. I feel like family will tell it to you straight. And I mean, it took my family a year to even read my published books, but once they did, it was nice. It was nice to get that honest feedback, because they'll say, yeah, we liked it. There were certain places that I was able to connect with, but that's because I'm the romantic in my family and they're more into adventure YA novels. And so, I guess it depends on who your readers are and what they like too. So, yeah.
Yeah, someone loves you if they read your book that's totally not in a genre they would normally read.
For real. I mean, this brings me to a story where I was meeting someone online for a date, and he was really nice. I'll say that. But he'd known that I was an author beforehand and looked up my books and even read the first few chapters of Unseen Road to Love, which was my first that I published. And in that story, my character really loves donuts. And so she meets the guy in a donut shop and he buys her a donut. So when we meet at the restaurant to go eat, he brings me a donut in a brown paper bag and said, "So I hear you like donuts." And I looked at him and I went, "You gotta be kidding me. You read it?" And he said, "Well, I wanted to get to know you better." And I went, "Oh my gosh, you're the only guy who is that, and you are a genius." And so after that, though, I mean, that was the one date that we ever had, and it never worked out. But at the same time, I will never forget that, because I feel like if guys actually romance novels, especially of the books that belong to the authors themselves, my goodness, they will know everything in their heart and soul, like everything that they need to know.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you know how to decipher it, I think,
Yes. Yes.
because
that's true.
I think we put a lot of ourselves in it, but in ways that people might not recognize,
Oh, for sure. We put ourselves into our villains too, which
Oh,
which is very
absolutely.
subtle. I mean, we don't want to consider ourselves a villain, but at the same time, yeah, I put all my strengths and my weaknesses into my writing, and I project all those feelings of happiness and sadness.
Yeah, I mean, like the villains say and do the things that you've thought of doing, but like, no, you shouldn't
Oh, for
do,
sure.
right? So you have your villain do it instead.
It's true.
Okay, so you told me that you had some bad dating experiences that kind of changed, the tone of your writing and your philosophies on love and that sort of thing. Is this something that you want to share with us?
Let me get the book out, because I have written a lot of experiences down that really shaped not only my writing, but my goodness, my whole love experience. Let me think of some fun ones for you, because these are pretty recent and fresh in my head that I just love sharing. I've been in lots of online dating situations. I'm a teacher, so I spend a lot of my time. So it's hard to really go out and meet people, even when you're in a YSA. Uh, I mean, I have a lot of great friends and I do meet a lot of great people, but dating experiences is kind of hard. So I started out online dating back when I was 21. And before that, I hadn't even had my first kiss. So I was really eager to start that new part of my life, I guess. Really ready to put myself out there. Man, I felt like an ugly duckling for a long time. I had braces for 5 years, two different headgears. I had rosacea, so I had really blotchy skin, and I was 70 pounds overweight. And so I just had zero confidence and zero experience talking to boys, despite the fact that I did do ballroom at some point. So it wasn't until I was 21 when I had, lost a lot of weight and that my skin cleared up and my braces were off, and I felt new and ready to put myself out there. And so once I did, I had to do online dating, because as a teacher, it's really hard to meet people. I work with kids all day and I spend time with my coworkers, but it's just I was the youngest person there at the time. And so I just wasn't having a lot of experiences on my end. But even in a YSA too, I had a lot of good friends, but I just had a hard time making those first connections. So online dating was a lot easier. And once I started doing that, experiences started to pick up. And I remember my first kiss. My first ever kiss was when I was with this guy that I actually went to high school with, but didn't know it at the time. In fact, he was the type of guy that I probably wouldn't have gone out with. Like, we're talking emo drummer of our school. And also, I found out later there was a big incident where the school had flooded, actually, because some kid had thrown a pencil in the ceiling, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that was me." And I went, "What? You're the guy who got away with it?" And no one found out. So it was really funny how that turned out. So it was the second date when it happened, and he even asked, "So how come you've never been kissed?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And was super awkward about it, but he gave me this chicken peck that was so quick that I didn't know how to react, and I started to laugh, actually, like, so awkwardly. And he felt awkward because he's like, "You're laughing," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, it's not funny. Can we try that again?" And it was so bad.
Oh, his poor ego.
I know. We got a do-over, and it was totally fine after that. But afterwards, I'm like, this was not what I had read it out to be. I had read First Kiss so often that I thought it would be something kind of magical, but at the same time, like I really didn't know how to feel about it. I'm like, yay, it happened, but where are my fireworks? So I know it took a few more tries and a few more experiences to where I started to find out kind of the reality of online dating. A lot of people are on there usually to look people up for something temporary or a one-time deal, and so it was hard because slowly you start to blend the lines between romantic and lust, which is hard because as a romantic, yes, I wanted to have these experiences, but I was meeting a lot of guys who were more into lustful experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
so trying to retain my values and also my own philosophies of what I was looking for was really hard when I was suddenly having all this attention that I've been hoping for years, and it was now happening to me, but it wasn't in the way that I had expected. And so I wasn't sure how to move forward with that. And so I started, though, to understand what chemistry felt like and how I could actually write that down and the tingling down my spine actually feels like. And so being able to write that in my own words was a lot better. Um, I will say, though, as I started to have experiences, I kind of entered a dark place because with those experiences came some pretty bad situations. And I won't depress anybody talking about them because we've all had them. But I did meet this one person who was gonna take my roommate on a motorcycle ride. And so as he walked in, he comes in with his leather jacket, with his deep voice, tall stature, scruff on his face, looking the epitome of what every girl probably had wanted, right? As I was writing my story in the time that he was walking in, I was thinking, I need a bad guy. Who's going to be my bad guy? And as he walked in, he's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, you. It's going to be you. And I didn't know why, but he was the one that inspired this bad guy. So I started to like write this character as a suave guy, with the same rugged features and all this. And as I wrote him down, I realized, wow, I was picking up on some real vibes because it was about a year later that he started to use that charm on me a little bit and asked me to go for a ride on that motorcycle. And oh my gosh, did I fall for it. And it was like the stuff of dreams. I will say that. It was thoroughly enjoyable. Of course, I did get my heart broken, but it did strengthen the relationship I had with my roommate. Not at the time. Oh yeah, we were totally butting heads at the time, but after having both our hearts kind of broken at that time, we bonded over it, and so I was able to discover a lot of meaning in friendship and in relationships and kind of how messy things can get, but understanding that vibes are real and being able to understand how people are and how they work and sort of the cause and effect of actions made my writing again that much better. As I had my own dating experiences, I learned backstories and I learned how those backstories can affect people's future decisions or how they're going to act. And that makes for excellent planning when you're writing a story. If you're going to write a particular character, you have to come up with a backstory that will help motivate this person to do the next thing, I realized. And so I think that's also going back to how much I love my male characters is I gave them this really elaborate backstory that I loved, and I wanted to see them use it. And so that's why I wrote their perspective in the Burnheart Redemption a lot because I loved doing that. And so, but with recent dating experiences, I'll just say this one for fun. The most recent one that I had was we had almost gotten arrested actually on this date and this would probably be used actually in a future a novel, maybe a contemporary romance that I have because this is hilarious. He wanted to go stargazing, so I thought, okay, what could go wrong with that, until as we're driving he finds an area that looks kind of not sketchy, but just doesn't look like we should drive on, even though there was no sign and the gate was wide open. I go, this seems like it would be private property. I don't want to get in trouble. And he goes, well, it's the middle of the night. No one's going to care. And there's no sign, so we're going to be fine. I go, okay. I mean, I like trusting my instincts, but I don't like to be a party pooper. So we end up, you know, sitting there and looking at the stars and talking for an hour. And so when that happened, though, I had to use the bathroom and there was nowhere to go. So I had to make him sit in the cab while I go behind the truck so that way I can have some privacy and do my thing. But halfway through, I am getting serious stage fright and it's taking a long time for this to actually happen. So I'm like, oh crap, how long is this going to take me? Until suddenly I hear him shout from the window, pull your pants up, get back in the truck. And I went, wait, what? And I know. And I mean, that can be taken seriously out of context, but trust me, it was all pretty censored. So I see these two headlights driving up and I went, oh no. So I hurry and put myself together. I jump in the cab and that's when the squad car lights flicker on and I, red and blue lights flashing and I went, oh no, I knew this was going to happen. So this cop is telling us to get out of the car and I'm like, well, this is the greatest second date I've been on. And we both stand side by side and he's being total bad cop and just doing his job, but still he was asking our names, what our purpose was there. I didn't have my ID on me. It was in the car. So I tried to be polite and tell him where it is. And he just asked me for my name and birthday. And that's when two more squad cars show up, actually. And good cop jumps out and is looking at the information, kind of asking us kindly what we're there for. And the guy I was with was really honest about it. Said, "Oh, we met on a dating app." And I'm like, was that really necessary to tell them? But he looks at our info and he looks at my birthday and he goes, "Oh, happy late birthday." And I'm like, "Thank you." And so just like waiting for what to happen because I look up and there is a chopper with a spotlight on us. And I know. And I go, oh my heck, I'm going to get arrested and this is going to go on my record and it's going to be all for this boy that I don't even know that well. And so, but luckily he said, "So where'd you guys meet again?" And he goes, "Again, on a dating app." And he goes, "Stargazing, huh?" Like he just kind of knew that we were a couple kids, like with no ill intentions. Because apparently in that area they had a lot of vandalism, so they were taking extra precaution. Most likely they just probably didn't want to do the paperwork, so they just said, just get out of here and don't come back. So we didn't get ticketed or anything, but my gosh, was my adrenaline going. And did I have to pee anymore? No. So we jump in the truck, we drive away, and we're just laughing the whole way home because it was the, oh my gosh, did we just get away with it kind of relief. But that was a date story for the books for sure. And it's those type of experiences that I have consistently. I meet so many guys who all turn out to be a little bit different or out there. And my friends kind of say, why does this only happen to you? And I go, I'm pretty sure God knew that I would become a writer and would need as much inspiration as possible. And trust me, it has helped a lot. Because I met one guy who, it was a very casual setting. We were getting smoothies and he turned out to moonlight as a stripper. And so when I tell people that, I get one of two reactions. They're like, "Oh, really?" And the other one's like, "Oh, really? Did you get a dance?" And I go, "No." First of all, couldn't afford him in that way, but he was kind of the stereotype for sure, where if you ever watch Magic Mike, and I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but it was pretty much that experience where he was pretty much pitching me his entire plan of making it big in Vegas and all this stuff. He even gave me his card, which I think I kept just for kicks and giggles.
For fun.
It's somewhere in a drawer for fun, yeah. But I found it ironic that he paid for my smoothie. So technically, a stripper paid me for the entertainment of the day. But I mean, again, context. We only got smoothies and that was it. but it was like, okay, that's interesting. But I always feel the need to ask as many questions as possible when I meet someone with a story like that, because I don't know when I'll have the opportunity again. And so anytime I meet someone with a just an interesting history or maybe job or whatever, I love talking to them. So I don't regret a lot of those experiences because, man, it lets me know the world a little bit better.
I like asking people questions as well, and I get to do it for a living.
Which, that's awesome for you, because usually I just get paid in smoothies. So
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about Unseen Road to Love a little bit. Tell me, because that's the one I haven't read. What's the plot of that one? What's it like?
Okay, so I kind of took this idea from the movie The Family Man with Nicolas Cage. I had seen this movie a while back when I was in college, and as I watched it, I really, really loved the storyline. But what I really didn't like was that this man who was really rich and well off for himself because he made a choice to sort of walk away from the woman he loved to pursue his career. He got the opportunity to see what his life would have been like if he had chosen to stay with her, and fell in love with that life. Even though it was simpler, he woke up from that fantasy into his rich reality and realized how much he had wished he had made a different choice. But when he goes to the woman that he originally loved, the movie ended with them just having coffee, and that was kind of it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
so dissatisfied with that ending. I wanted to know what would have happened to that couple after the fact, because yes, they probably would have gotten together, but that story would not be the same as the simple, happy lifestyle that he had dreamt of. So I thought I would write something a little similar, but give it the ending that I had originally wanted. And so I wrote this story about a guy named Logan Atwood. And this was also going back and forth between the female and male perspective. And it starts out with him making this choice to work in this big office in Chicago. He originally started out at Dixie State University, which is in St. George, Utah. That's where I went to college. And so I decided to, put a shout out in there. And when he made this choice, he was estranged from his family. This is also an LDS contemporary romance, so he had left the church for a while, and he also ends up in this really bad car accident. Now, this is on the back of the book, so I'm not really spoiling a whole lot, but there will be a few spoilers in here, so get ready. Now, when he is in this car accident, he ends up in a coma. And this whole scene was actually inspired from a personal experience of mine. I was in a really nasty accident when I was 20 years old back in 2012. And it was around Christmas time, actually. When that happened, I had been walking home one night, crossing the street, and this car, who I thought was going to continue going straight, ended up turning right at the stop sign as I walked into the road and didn't slow down in time. So he was going about 35 and he took out my knees pretty good. I slid up onto the hood of his car and my face hit the windshield. So it had crushed in my nose, had cut up my face really bad, and gave me a very severe concussion. And when they slammed on the brakes, I had landed in the road. It knocked me out of my shoes. I remember that. And I wasn't unconscious, but I was really out of it. I mean, in shock and also concussed. I didn't know what was going on. And so I remember laying in the road and going, I shouldn't be laying in a road right now. So I sat myself up and I see these two kind of 20-something-year-old guys jump out of their car, freaking out. And so they were the ones trying to figure out what to do next. And I can't remember exactly how it went on. I know that they weren't making any plans to call 911 or find help. So I remember saying, you should take me to the hospital. So they picked me up, put me in their car, and drove me into the emergency room. And I remember flashes of the driver crying and thinking that I was going to press charges, and holding his hand and feeling off because I know that my face felt weird and everything in my body just felt weird and heavy. But I had lost a little bit of consciousness during that time. I was awake, but not aware. I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was from. They took me to the emergency room, and they had to get my information from my ID and emergency contacts. And so I was about 6 hours from home, and so my mom actually happened to be an hour away at the time, which helped a lot because she was the first thing that I remember kind of coming to. I do remember my dad's aunt being there. Bless her heart, because she was the one who really took care of me while I was in and out of consciousness. They told me that while I was in that state, I kept asking if my teeth were okay, because that's the important thing, right? And singing this super happy song that I remember like word for word, and like insisting upon it. So they would try to sing me other songs to keep me calm, but I'm like, no, I have to sing this one. And so that's what they tell me. I don't remember a lot of this, but I do remember in that state, I was sort of remembering this memory that I had a year prior. I was at a carnival and I was with a bunch of people that I loved, and with the friend that introduced me to all these romance novels, my roommate. She was the one who burst into my room one evening as we were both really hopping mad, not at each other, but just at life in general. And she starts playing this ukulele, this that I didn't even know she had, and singing this super happy song, right? And she said, I couldn't get anything done with my bad attitude. Now, I say this because this part is actually in the book Unseen Road to Love. I decided to have my character, my female character, have a ukulele and write a song and have music be a central part of that. The original title was called Song of a Dream because this guy ends up in this coma and he has a chance of going back 5 years and finding out what would have happened if he had made a different choice. And so making a different choice, though, it wasn't like he was seeing what his life would have been like if he had made a choice and then that was his current reality, if that makes any sense. He just got to go back and just kind of see what would have played out and see his family for Christmas, I guess, and meet the woman of his dreams. But they both shared this music talent in common, and that's sort of how they bond. And once that happens, like this romance blooms between them. So music had been a central part in his life. And so another thing too is I had listened to just an Andy Grammer album that I absolutely was in love with, and all of those songs pretty much inspired a lot of the story too. So music was a very big thing for this story to blossom. So with that accident, I had a lot of problems with my knees and with my face and with a lot of physical therapy. So with this character having the same issues, I was able to sort of vent what I was dealing with and have that be the biggest inspiration for this story as well.
And again, this story is from the male's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know why I keep doing that. I guess I think maybe I just want to know how men think so badly.
Just trying to figure them out, huh?
I'm just trying to figure it out so much that I just feel this need to write it. But I actually do have my male friends read a lot of what I do and say, is this right? And they go, yeah, I mean, it's pretty close.
So how did you end up in Arizona?
Ooh, that's a good question. I was running away from my life, so to speak.
Been there.
I mean, I'm right. I was living in Utah at the time, and I lived in Utah most of my life, and it was a good life. I wouldn't say that I was really running away. I just needed something fresh and different. My job teaching, assisting teaching kindergarten wasn't really going anywhere. I was also doing a cleaning job that was making me work 12 hours a day, and I was just exhausted all the time. My relationships weren't going anywhere. I had some problems with roommates at the time, and my lease was also up. So I was in this sea of decisions, and I needed to make one fast. And so I was telling my mom about this, and she was already planning on moving to Arizona, actually, because her now husband is here, and she was able to relocate her job, and the city was buying out her property. So she had lots of reasons to come here. And Mesa is also her hometown. She grew up here. So she and I were talking, and she goes, hey, let's just run away. And I go, you know what, let's do that. So, but the more I thought about it and the more I planned for it, the more sense it made, and the more things fell into place. I would never move somewhere unless I had a job lined up, and so I had the hope of a job interview ready to go. And my now stepdad found this house that I'm currently sitting in, and it was a step up from the bunk bed that I was sleeping in. So there was a lot of hope to be found here. And so once I decided to say, yes, this is where I'm headed, I packed up my Jeep that I had and I drove here, and I ended up having the greatest experiences since then. I will say there's always that itch to find adventure and to seek somewhere new. And so I guess at the time that's made a lot of sense. But I will say once I got here and I didn't even have any furniture or a bed to sleep on for 2 months, I slept on an air mattress and the couch for a little while. I remember breaking down going, what did I just do? Oh. I know. I mean, we all have that where we're like, yay, we're so excited. And then suddenly it all hits you hard going, oh my gosh, did I just make a huge mistake? But no, it took a few weeks to get into into a routine and to also acclimate to the heat, because goodness, that was a big change from going Utah to Arizona. But I ended up getting a better job teaching what I love to do the most. I teach art and creative writing to my students, and that started happening after I was published and was producing a lot more artwork. And so doing that, my boss said, "We know we're not utilizing your talents in the right places. Let's put you in a place where you're really going to grow and teach something that you love to do." And I go, "That sounds fantastic. Let's do that." And that's where I was able to find out that I could actually say I love my job and I'm not just doing it for a paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So Arizona
great.
has been good to me so far.
So before I let you go, is there anything that you want the listeners to know?
Ooh, that's always a good question. Because it always changes. Sometimes I will believe in my philosophies one day and then not the next day, but that's just because, man, I'm having a bad day. But please cut all that out. But I will say this: love is going to be messy. And it's going to come with problems. And I found out that when I read love stories, there are some stories that really have no plot, that are just pure fantasy and are escapes. And I love to read those when I'm in the mood for them, and because they are wonderful. But I love reading books that have real, genuine problems to fix. Because in the real world, we have problems that need to be fixed all the time. And when you're able to connect with a character that has that same problem as you and has that same feelings, you realize you are not alone in this world. And that's why I started to write, because I wanted someone else to feel what I felt when I read a book, to be able to connect and to say, "Oh, I'm not alone," or also to give me an idea of how I can fix that problem. I thought, what someone had told me, love is what's left over when the passion and the romance dies. And I went, "Oh my gosh, what?" And it really made me sad to hear that. But I was able to look at my friend's parents who were so deeply and madly in love even after 30 years of marriage. And I go, wow, how is that possible? And they said, not without some heartbreak and hard work and some changes that needed to be made. And so if we are able to recognize that, yes, love stories are wonderful to read, but that they also still come with a lot of issues that we need to grow and change with, then we're able to appreciate a story that much more. And also to appreciate ourselves and know that, this is just how it works. Love is going to take some trial and error. It's going to take some weird experiences, almost getting arrested, or meeting a random stripper. I don't even know, but it's gonna take some messy parts, but it's gonna be so worth it when you meet somebody who, and I just want to also throw this out there too. When I was finishing Burnheart Redemption and the editors were tearing it apart, and I thought, my goodness, my heart and soul is being torn apart as well, I didn't know what to do. I was dating someone truly wonderful at the time, and I still think of him as wonderful because, not all characters have to be inspired by bad experiences. They can be inspired by really great ones as well. And he had come over with a chocolate shake and said, "What can I do to help? What can I do to just give you this motivator to help you keep going?" And he gave me the biggest hug and the, most knee-weakening kiss ever, and made me laugh for just 5 seconds, enough to really motivate me to write the last 20 pages of my book and to create this wonderful ending to this love story that I'd grown to love so much. And so after that, he even dressed up as my main character and was able to help promote this story. And so actually on my website, you can find a picture of him holding an apple, and he'll love that I'm totally throwing this out because he'll probably be listening to this, because we're still friends. But and it ultimately didn't work out. We still ended up being great friends afterwards, even still. But he was he was the hope that I needed to say, yes, they are out there. Heroes really are out there. And so if you think that romance novels are pure fantasy, no, they are absolutely real. So if I had to give any advice to readers out there, man, it'll take time. It'll be messy, but it is going to be so worth it when you find that real person. And don't settle for less than the heroes that you read about. because they do exist.
All right, Chelsea. So what are you working on now?
I am working on another Regency romance that is completed. Cedar Fort will not be publishing this one, so most likely this will be self-published unless I hear back from another company who'd be interested. So we'll see. There is another one that I am really hoping to produce. It is a kind of a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, but in an old Western perspective, more realistic, but more rugged and more gritty. And so that's going to be something that I hope will be my biggest project, and maybe not my first biggest project, but at least will let me hit the ground running. The next project that I'm working on with my Regency novel is definitely going to be a tribute to the deaf community. Now, my characters are not going to be deaf per se. They will be injured to the point where they can't speak, but they still need to communicate. And so they do have this knowledge in that, but they do encounter deaf characters in which they're able to communicate with and to have interactions with. And that was a lot of fun trying to figure out and trying to research. I interviewed some people who were translators and their experiences with it. I think it was also inspired by a speaker too that came who is deaf, but actually fell in love with her translator. And so when I heard that story, my goodness, my heart was soaring, and I thought I need to write something similar to this. And so the project is completed. I'm so happy with it. I really cleaned it up after all the editors, tearing apart my other work. They taught me the hard way what I needed to do. So now that it's ready to go, it will most likely be self-published or published with a different company, as Cedar Fort is not picking this one up this time. But I'm really excited to produce this one.
Is this one a sequel to Burnheart?
It was originally going to be.
Oh, I see. But now it's standalone.
Yeah. Standalone, because now that Cedar Fort will not be picking it up, I decided if it's going to go a different route, then I'm not going to take that risk, because I don't. Yeah.
Right, because sequels don't sell as well, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they don't. So, but it'll be great to get this project out and see where it'll go.
Okay, great. And I think the Burnheart, stands on its own. I think it.
Oh, yes.
It definitely, with the ending you have, it definitely can be a standalone novel, I think.
Right. The editors actually told me to do that, knowing that sequels may or may not work out in the end. Mm-hmm. And so they said, yeah, try to wrap it up to a point where we're happy with how it ended, because I wanted to give the side character, what's her name? Faye a love story as well. Mm-hmm. So this actually inspired the story that I wrote, where I go, okay, here's this younger sister who's watching all these love stories take place. What would her life be like? Would watching this give her that hope that it would happen, or would it kind of give her false expectations? So it forced me to ask questions, and once that happened, a whole new story evolved. Mm-hmm. So I did originally write this book as a sequel to it, but then decided to make it a standalone. And the more I made it a standalone, the more I was able to create a bigger world, because then I would have had to stick to the backstories of my other characters, but now I was able to write something new and different and fresh. That's what I loved more, was fresh.
All right, so let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Okay, they can find me on Instagram at Miss Chelsea Curran, and they can also find me on Facebook as just Chelsea Curran. I do have an author page, but I rarely get on it, so I would just probably stick to my Instagram, because I'm on there posting stuff every day. I also have a TikTok account. I'm on there as Chelsea Curran as well. If you can find me on TikTok, because I do love making a lot of videos, and I do show off my books there, and sometimes I dress up as my characters or potential characters, and it's so fun to just act things out and to put myself out there too. And so I'm very theatrical, and I'm weird, and it's fun to see some of my artwork on there as well. It's where I promote my art. So Instagram, TikTok. I do have my own website at chelseacurranauthor.com, and that's where you will find actually the pictures of my main characters from the Burnheart. So if you want to know who Adam Garrow and Philip Garrow and Ian O'Connor looks like, these are based off of 3 guys who are all actually in my life. 2 of them I previously dated, and one who is still a good friend of mine to this day, who actually loaned me this mic that I'm using. So thank you, Ryan. Ironically, all 3 of those guys are named Ryan, Ryan, and Brian. So,
well, thank goodness you didn't use their real names, because that would be incredibly confusing in the novel.
No kidding. But yeah, so the website's going to be super fun if you want to see the faces that I pictured while I was writing this story.
Awesome. Well, thank you for a fantastically fun evening and joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun to be here.